So by saying you haven't come across things that you've seen or witnessed using your sense data, you're presupposing that your sense data is the only way to gather information. Empiricism is the idea of knowledge. So in philosophy, empiricism is the study of knowledge, right?
And you know this
With empiricism, we're only limited to what we know about reality. But I've just shown you that there's a transcendental part of reality that you can't account for. Like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah,
it can equal 2 without you being here.
I don't think it's possible to know. So I'm sort of agreeing with you.
Yeah, I know you agree with me. So you're saying it's not, but you're still saying it's not possible. I'm saying if it's possible that there are transcendentals that exist, like 1 + 1 = 2, it's possible there's things outside of our sense data, outside of what we're experiencing, that could be irrelevant.
When they fall into
Faith comes
You
into
do. Yeah.
right?
Well,
I would when you get the gospel
call that more trust.
it is a modified kind of looping
You could
model.
actually come to a conclusion.
What's different from trust and faith?
It's also the first gospel we have in
Right.
Yeah, I do.
and it comes at one.
I have greater trust in that than in faith.
But hold on. Wait, 1 minute. So but what I would say is this: look, you're saying that you have trust in something. What's the difference between trust and faith for you?
Well, with trust, you can trust like a mathematical formula to come up with a solution.
Why can you
and
trust?
you can repeat an experiment and come up with the same answer. That's why I call it trust.
But that's based on chance. That's still based on a faith claim. That's not based on something that's factual. It could be the case that tomorrow 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. Because
to agree with you entirely, I would have to have faith because I can't prove it. I can do experiments that I trust.
well, I would argue. Yeah.
Come up with
So I would argue you have faith in most of your life. For example, when you got up this morning, did you think that the toothpaste, when it hits your toothbrush, was going to randomly go into the sky?
Well, I trust that because I do that every day and it works. You know?
But that's just probability. That's like I've seen it happen all the time, but that doesn't account for it always happening. Do you understand what I've said? You still have to have faith in it always happening in the same way because you can't prove that it's always going to be the same. That's why it's
till now. So I have trust in that. But I could pray every morning for something, and it may not happen.
But then I could argue there's many instances of people praying every morning and it does happen for them. So that's not an argument against my position. You don't understand what I'm saying? When you presuppose the uniformity of nature, i.e. that your toothbrush will always behave the same way with your toothpaste, you're having a faith-based claim about something. Because you're claiming now, based on probability, I can show that this toothbrush will always hit my toothpaste. That's fine, but you can't prove it's always going to be that case.
I mean, you said that the prayers are always answered, but they're not.
Right, so you didn't hear the claim that I just made, did you?
Well, the one you made, you know.
Yeah. So me, I was talking about. So I'm talking about the uniformity of nature. You, as a humanist, presuppose the uniformity of nature. The problem is, in order to, you have to have faith that nature is uniform, that things always continue, because you can't show it using science. You can't show me factually, objectively, that your toothpaste will always hit your toothbrush every time you wake up.
The thing is, when the day comes along and it doesn't, then I'll have to reassess the science. That's just what.
Maybe, but that's a faith-based claim.
People thought that the world was flat, and then they did experiments, and they thought, oh, well, it's not.
Right, but that's still a religious claim. You're having faith in science. That's what scientism is.
And then,
that's what I'm trying to show
and then
you.
later on,
Right.
people realised it wasn't just curved, it was round. And then
Right.
people worked out later on, the science progressed. Okay, it's not perfectly round, it's actually spherical. And then many years later, it's not actually a perfect
Yeah,
sphere.
but we as
It's
Christians,
like
so
a
yeah.
little bit flat top.
Yeah, so we as Christians wouldn't deny that science has claims. We're not saying
and-
that.
and they
but
progress. So
we're not denying the principle of science. What I'm trying to tell you, if you would allow me to finish, because you're not listening.
Interrupting me, actually.
Yeah, you're interrupting me right now.
I started a sentence and then you got a bit excited and you
Well,
wanted to say
the problem is you're not bringing an argument against what I've said. You're telling me that it's probable these things will happen, but what you're telling me is that you believe in a religion. That's what I'm trying to show you. You believe in a religion of scientism. You have faith in the scientism God. You may not say that, but that's what you believe in. Because you're telling me that I have faith because I've seen these principles happen over again. But you don't know whether they're going to happen over and over again. You're just telling me they're going to happen over again. That's faith. So you're telling me that I shouldn't trust in the God above. I shouldn't trust in Jesus Christ because that's a faith-based belief and it's incredulous. But we should instead trust science because it gets some testifiable things right, but it gets most metaphysical things wrong. doesn't tell us about metaphysical realities, doesn't tell us why 1 + 1 = 1, doesn't tell us about consciousness, doesn't tell us about our reality and our sense data. But we should trust that because it gets some things right about reality.
So, just go rewind. You said that I have faith in.
You have a religious faith in science, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I don't. No, you
do.
asserted that, but
I didn't have to assert it. It's what you've told me. From what
I've told you.
I've deduced from what you've told me is that you have a faith-based religion.
So you've ignored what I said about science developing.
Yeah, I understood that science posits quantifiable and researchable data. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying your idea of that's always going to be the case. For example, that your toothpaste is always going to take your toothbrush being the case is not something that you can find objective.
You asserted that I believe.
So that principle cannot be discovered objectively.
Well, I said that if one day comes along and the toothpaste doesn't go on the brush, you say, oh, I didn't have it.
Right, but I could have the same. I could say the same. One minute. So I could say the same thing about Jesus. So I could say the same thing about Jesus. I could say, well, if it's the case that I die and then I don't see Jesus, that's fine. But that's still a faith-based proposition. You're telling me, well, if I am proven wrong, then I'm going to die. That's fine. That's honest. I don't deny that. But what I'm saying is, you still have a faith in scientism, the idea that these principles of gravity, the law of nature, will be consistent over time. I'm not asserting it. I'm just telling you how this is.
The evidence changes. I'm willing to change my view.
No, you've accepted the evidence you want to hear, but the fact is, evidence isn't just purely epistemic.
You're trying to tell me how I think.
No, I'm not trying to tell you. Look, hear what I'm saying, yeah? Evidence isn't purely epistemic. If I say 1 + 1 = 2, what am I expositing? You can't answer it.
So,
It's basic maths.
Carry on.
So it's basic maths. So if I said to you 1 + 1 = 2, what would it mean?
Carry on with your.
So you can't answer 1 + 1 = 2.
I'm just deciding not to play your game. That's all.
It's not. 1 minute. Sorry. Because I literally have to get them in. Sorry. Right. I have to. Sorry. Because if you can't answer 1 + 1 = 2, then I don't think you should even be a humanist. That doesn't make any logical sense to me. As far as I'm concerned.
choosing not to answer your question.
You're choosing not to answer my question.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
No, I just don't. Tell me where you're going with this, and then I'll understand why you're asking me.
So my question to you was, does 1 + 1 = 2?
Now you tell me why you're asking.
So I actually asked you that question.
Yeah, well, I'm choosing not to answer that. I'm asking you why.
Is it because you don't know the question?
Explain to me.
So I'm asking you a question. Do you not know the question?
Just jump ahead. You're waiting for my answer, then you're going to say something. So just explain.
Well,
to me
I'll get to my point. If you agree on a proposition that 1 + 1 = 2, then we can get to the point.
No, you can carry on without my answer.
So do you disagree with the proposition that 1 + 1 = 2?
I'm more interested in why you're asking me the question.
Do you disagree with it? I just want to know. Is it a yes or no? Simple answer.
Well,
so I'm going to assume that because you're suffice of knowledge and logic, right? I'm going to assume that you don't believe 1 + 1 = 2, right?
No.
In reality,
so
so I'm answering the question now. So in reality, there are objective truths. There are things that exist outside of us that are called metaphysics. For example, 1 + 2 = 2 is a metaphysical claim. The idea of two objects equaling two objects. So one object equals two objects. This is outside of what is viewed epistemic. We can view one object and another object, but even if you weren't here, there would still be one object and another object. You get me so far?
I'm following you.
Right. So that means the principle thereof of 1 + 1 = 2 will still exist objectively, whether you and I are standing here, right? That means there's other bodies of evidence. There isn't just you see it, therefore it's real, because that can't be the case. Because then, therefore, we can say, well, 1 + 1 can't equal 2. It must mean something else. Or how can we know 1 + 1 = 2? Because we haven't experienced all reality yet. For example, you've never been to other worlds. There could be possible other worlds that you've not been to where 1 + 1 = 5. You don't know this. But I'm talking about pure empiricism now, pure metaphysics, right? 1 + 1 = 2, whether you and I are here or not. And we're saying, look, for God, that's the same case. God is a transcendental, metaphysical reality, right? He exists outside of our minds, outside of our conscious realities. He's not bound to scientism. And I'm saying you have a faith in a religious view because you believe in scientism.
I know you're saying that, but I disagree that.
Well, you're going to have to disprove what I've said.
I don't know.
Okay. Fred, anyway. Fair, I'll just wrap up. Because there's no point. Right, the guys are waste of time. No, but anyway, look. I'm just going to say this, look, at the end of the day, like, if you as a humanist deny objective realities, you therefore cannot posit anything truly exists and doesn't exist. You have a faith-based worldview. Like, it's as simple as that. How many times have I explained this to atheists and humanists? The dilemma you have is, if 1 + 1 = 2, then there's objective reality in the universe, things that transcend us that are not in reality. So the fact is, you as a human being can't just claim, well, if I can't see it, it isn't real. That's not an argument. You have to show cohesively, using your own sense data, by the way, because it's the only thing you can use, that it's a fact that 1 + 1 = 2 in all possible realities. You can't show that, therefore your atheism is limiting you. With a God, we at least have a contingent, we at least have a necessary reality in which all things are contingent upon, which makes sense in empiricism. But unfortunately, if you don't have that idea of reality, you fall into terrorism. But anyway, yeah.